He locked me outside in a blizzard and laughed while I begged for my life. My lips turned blue. My fingers went numb. I thought I was going to die on the doorstep of the mansion I helped him buy. But I didn't die. I survived. And 6 months later, I walked back into his world wearing the same dress from that night and watched federal agents put him in handcuffs in front of everyone he ever wanted to impress. This is the story of how the woman he tried to erase became the woman who erased him. And if you've ever loved someone who destroyed you, you need to hear what happened next. Because this isn't just about revenge. It's about something much more powerful than that. Welcome to Reality Stories Hub. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. Section 1. The Perfect Illusion, 1,000 Words. People always told me I was living the dream. And from the outside, I guess it looked that way. The big house on the hill with floor-to-ceiling windows. The expensive cars. The fancy parties where everyone dressed like they belonged in a magazine. Women would come up to me at those events and say, "You're so blessed to have a man like him." And I would smile. I would nod. I would say thank you. But deep inside, I knew the truth. Blessed wasn't the word I would have chosen. My name doesn't matter for this story. What matters is what happened to me. And what I became after. Because this isn't just my story. It's the story of every woman who ever loved someone who stopped loving her back. Every woman who gave everything and got nothing in return. Every woman who thought she was weak until life proved her wrong. When I first met Daniel, he wasn't rich. He wasn't powerful. He was just a man with big dreams and even bigger ambitions. He worked long hours at a startup that barely paid him. He lived in a tiny apartment with furniture from thrift stores. But when he talked about his future, his eyes would light up like fireworks. And I fell in love with that light. I fell in love with his passion, his drive, his belief that he could change the world. So I did something that now, looking back, seems almost foolish. I gave up my job. I had a good position at a marketing firm. Good salary. Good benefits. A future of my own. But Daniel said he needed me. He said we were a team. He said that together, we could build something amazing. So I walked away from my career. I became his partner in every sense of the word. I stayed up late helping him write business proposals. I hosted investors in our cramped living room. I turned every failure into a reason to keep going. I believed in him more than I believed in myself. And you know what? It worked. His company took off. The money started flowing in. First a little, then a lot, then more than we ever imagined. Within 3 years, we moved into that mansion on the hill. Within 5 years, he was on the cover of business magazines. People called him a genius, a visionary, a self-made man. And every time someone said that, I would feel a little piece of myself disappear. Because here's what nobody saw. As the money grew, the man I loved shrank. The warmth in his eyes turned cold. The hand that used to hold mine at night started holding his phone instead. The man who used to dance with me in our tiny kitchen now barely looked at me across our enormous dining table. He still called me his queen in public. But in private, I became something else. A decoration. A responsibility. A reminder of the life he wanted to forget. At first, I made excuses. He's just busy. He's under pressure. Success changes people, but it doesn't change love. Right? Wrong. So wrong. The late nights became later. The business trips became longer. The smiles he gave other women became brighter than any smile he'd given me in months. And when I tried to talk about it, he would shut me down with practiced ease. "You're being paranoid," he'd say. "You're imagining things." And maybe I wanted to believe him, because believing him meant my world wasn't falling apart. I tried everything to fix us. I planned romantic getaways that he canceled. I cooked his favorite meals that he was too busy to eat. I dressed up for dinners where he wouldn't even look up from his phone. I laughed at his jokes in front of his friends, even though he hadn't made me genuinely laugh in years. I became smaller and smaller, trying to fit into whatever space he would give me. And still, it wasn't enough. The truth is, I knew something was wrong long before that night. You always know, don't you? Women have this instinct. This quiet voice that whispers the truth even when everyone around you is lying. I felt it in the way he looked through me instead of at me. In the way his touch became mechanical, like he was checking off a box. In the way he started arguments over nothing, like he was looking for an excuse to leave the room. But I held on. I held on to the memories of who we used to be. The couple who couldn't afford furniture but could afford to dream. The partners who built an empire together. The love that once felt unbreakable. I held on because letting go felt like admitting I had wasted the best years of my life on someone who no longer saw my worth. And then came that night. The night that changed everything. The night I thought might kill me. But instead, it woke me up. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives become the doorways to our greatest transformations. We just don't know it yet. We can't see it through the pain, through the betrayal, through the cold. That night, the temperature dropped below freezing. Snow was falling heavy and thick, the kind that makes everything disappear under a blanket of white. I was at a charity event across town. Daniel had promised to pick me up. "Don't drive in this weather," he'd said that morning. And I believed him. I always believed him. So I waited. And waited. I called his phone 20 times. No answer. I texted. Nothing. The event ended. People left. Soon it was just me and the cleaning staff. And still I waited. Because I trusted him. Because I loved him. Because I was a fool. When I finally gave up waiting and drove home myself, the roads were terrifying. Ice covered everything. My hands shook on the steering wheel. The windshield wipers could barely keep up with the snow. Every turn felt dangerous. But I kept going, because I thought he must be worried. I thought maybe something happened to him. Maybe his phone died. Maybe he got stuck somewhere. My mind created a dozen innocent explanations, because that's what love does. It protects us from the truth, until the truth becomes impossible to ignore. When I pulled into our driveway, his car was there. Engine still warm, which meant he'd been home for a while. The lights were on inside the house. I could see movement through those big glass windows we'd been so proud of. I remember thinking, thank God he's safe. Isn't that crazy? After everything, my first thought was relief that he was okay. That's how deep love runs, even when it's drowning you. I got out of the car, my boots crunching in the fresh snow. That's when I noticed something that made my heart skip. A woman's coat draped over our couch. Red, expensive looking. Not mine. And next to the door, a pair of high heels. Also not mine. For a moment, I just stood there in the freezing cold, staring through that window like I was watching a movie about someone else's life. My breath came out in white clouds. My fingers started going numb. But I couldn't move. Couldn't think. Couldn't accept what I was seeing. I heard laughter. His laughter. The kind of warm, genuine laughter I hadn't then heard from him in over a year. And it was joined by another sound. A woman's voice. Light. Playful. Intimate. The kind of intimacy that doesn't happen in one night. This wasn't the first time. I knew that immediately. This had been going on for a while. How long? Months? Years? How many times had he lied to my face? I don't remember walking to the door. I don't remember turning the handle. But suddenly I was inside, standing in my own home like an intruder. And there they were. Daniel, shirt half unbuttoned, holding a glass of wine. And her. Young. Beautiful. Comfortable. Like she belonged there. Like she was the wife and I was the stranger. They both froze when they saw me. But here's the part that still haunts me. Daniel didn't look guilty. He didn't look sorry. He looked annoyed. Like I had interrupted something important. Like I was the problem. The woman scrambled to grab her things, mumbling apologies. But Daniel just stood there, calm as anything. "You weren't supposed to be back this early," he said. "Not, I'm sorry. Not, I can explain." Just annoyed that I had messed up his timeline. My voice came out as a whisper. "Who is she?" He shrugged. Actually shrugged. Like I'd asked him about the weather. Someone who understands what I need. I felt something crack inside my chest. Not my heart. Something deeper. My sense of reality. My understanding of who I was and what my life meant. Everything I thought I knew shattered in that moment like glass hitting concrete. I turned to leave. I had to get out. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. But as I reached for the door, his hand grabbed my wrist. Tight. Almost painful. "Where do you think you're going?" His voice had an edge I'd never heard before. Cold. Threatening. "Away from you," I managed to say. And that's when his face changed. The mask of the successful, charming businessman fell away. What was underneath was something cruel. Something that had maybe always been there, just hidden. He walked past me and threw open the front door. The blizzard howled into the house, bringing with it a blast of freezing air that stole my breath. "You want to leave?" he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "Then leave." Before I could respond, before I could even process what was happening, he pushed me toward the open door. Not hard enough to make me fall, but firm enough to make his intention clear. I stumbled onto the porch, the cold hitting me like a physical blow. I wasn't dressed for this. I had a thin coat. No gloves. No hat. The event had been indoors. I never imagined I'd need to survive a blizzard. I turned back, reaching for the door. Daniel, please. It's freezing out here. We can talk. Just let me. The door slammed in my face. I heard the lock click. And then, through the wooden glass, I heard him laugh. That same warm laugh he'd been sharing with her. He was laughing at me. At my pain. At my fear. The man I had loved. The man I had sacrificed everything for. The man I had built an empire with. He was laughing while I froze on his doorstep. I pounded on the door. I shouted his name until my throat was raw. I begged. I cried. I did everything except the one thing I should have done, which was walk away with my dignity. But in that moment, dignity didn't matter. Survival mattered. Warmth mattered. Understanding why the person you loved most in the world wanted you dead mattered. But the door stayed closed. The lights inside dimmed. And the snow kept falling, covering my tracks, covering me, covering everything until I couldn't tell where I ended, and the storm began. My body started shaking uncontrollably. My fingers went numb. My lips felt like ice. And I realized, with a clarity that cut through even the cold, that if I stayed there, I would die. He would let me die. The man who once promised to protect me forever was willing to watch me freeze to death on his porch. So I did the only thing I could. I walked into the storm. I don't remember much about walking through that blizzard. Memory gets fuzzy when your body is shutting down from cold. I remember my heels breaking in the snow. I remember falling more than once. I remember thinking about my mother, who passed away when I was young. I wondered if this was how it would end. If they would find me buried in snow come morning. If Daniel would even pretend to care. The cold does strange things to your mind. At some point, I stopped feeling my hands and feet. The shivering stopped, which I later learned is a very bad sign. It means your body is giving up. Shutting down non-essential systems to keep your heart and brain going just a little longer. I stumbled along a road I didn't recognize, my vision blurring, my legs barely holding me up. Then headlights. Bright and piercing through the white darkness. I tried to raise my hand, but my arm wouldn't respond. I think I fell. I remember the sensation of the ground rising up to meet me, or maybe I was falling down to meet it. The snow felt almost soft, almost welcoming, like a bed I could just rest in for a while. A voice cut through the fog in my mind. Oh my God, can you hear me? Stay with me, honey, stay with me. Hands on my shoulders. Warm hands. Strong hands. A woman's face appeared above me, lined with age and worry and kindness. So much kindness that I started crying without knowing why. I woke up in a small bedroom with pale yellow walls. A heater hummed in the corner. Heavy blankets covered me. For a moment, I didn't know where I was or how I got there. Then the door opened, and that same kind face appeared. She was maybe in her 60s, with silver hair pulled back and eyes that had seen hard things but stayed soft anyway. Welcome back, she said, sitting on the edge of the bed. I'm Patricia. I found you on Route 47 last night. You've been asleep for almost 12 hours. My throat was too dry to speak. She handed me water, and I drank it like I'd been in a desert for days. Thank you, I finally managed to whisper. Don't thank me yet, she said gently. We need to talk about what happened to you. Those bruises on your wrist didn't come from the cold. And that's when everything broke open. I told her everything. About Daniel. About the years of slowly disappearing in my own marriage. About the other woman. About the door slamming in my face. About the cold. I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. Patricia just sat there, holding my hand, letting me fall apart in her guest room. You're safe now, she said when I finally quieted. You can stay here as long as you need. Over the next week, Patricia took care of me like I was her own daughter. She treated my frostbite, made me warm soup, and let me sleep away the exhaustion that had been building for years. But more than that, she talked to me. Really talked. She told me about her own marriage, decades ago, to a man who used his fists instead of his words. She told me about the night she finally left with nothing but her 2 children and a suitcase. The hardest part, she said one evening as we sat by her small fireplace, isn't leaving. It's believing you deserve better. Because men like that, they're good at making you forget your own worth. Her words planted something in me. A seed that would take time to grow, but once it started, nothing could stop it. I began to see my situation differently. I hadn't failed. I hadn't done anything wrong. I had loved someone who wasn't capable of loving me back. One afternoon, Patricia let me use her phone. My hands shook as I blocked Daniel's number. One tap. That's all it took to cut the cord that had been strangling me for years. I didn't call my old friends. Didn't contact anyone from my old life. I just disappeared. And you know what? It felt like freedom. Patricia let me stay in her guest room for over a month. During that time, I started to rediscover who I was without him. I remembered that I used to love reading. Used to love early morning walks. Used to have opinions and dreams and a personality that wasn't just a reflection of what my husband needed me to be. Every day, I felt a little more like myself. Every day, I felt a little less like a ghost. But I also started to get angry. Not the hot, explosive kind of anger. The cold, calculated kind. The kind that plans. Because as the weeks passed and I healed, I realized something important. Daniel had tried to erase me. He had tried to make me so small that when he finally discarded me, no one would notice. No one would care. I would just be another woman who couldn't handle being married to a powerful man. But I wasn't erased. I was still here. And I knew things about Daniel that no one else knew. I had been there at the beginning. I had seen how the empire was built. I knew where the cracks were, where the lies were buried, where the truth had been carefully hidden away. Patricia noticed the change in me. "You've got that look," she said one morning over coffee. "What look?" "The look of a woman who's decided she's not going to be a victim anymore." I smiled. It was the first real smile I'd had in months. Maybe years. "I need to ask you a favor." "Anything, honey." "I need your help starting something. Something for women like us. Women who need a way out." Patricia's eyes lit up. "I thought you'd never ask." That afternoon, we started planning what would eventually become the Rising Phoenix Project. A shelter, a legal fund, a network of support for women escaping dangerous marriages. We started with nothing but determination and Patricia's spare bedroom. But sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes the smallest spark can start the biggest fire. Starting over is terrifying. But you know what's more terrifying? Staying in a life that's killing you slowly. I moved into a tiny apartment above a coffee shop in the next town. It wasn't much. One room. A bathroom that barely fit a person. A kitchen that was really just a hot plate and a mini fridge. But it was mine. Every morning, I woke up to the smell of fresh coffee drifting up through the floorboards. And every morning, I felt grateful to be alive. Patricia and I met twice a week to work on the Rising Phoenix Project. We started by helping just 3 women. One was escaping a husband who controlled every penny she spent. Another was hiding from a man who had threatened to kill her if she left. The third was pregnant and terrified, with nowhere to go. We gave them what I wish someone had given me years ago: a safe place, legal advice, and the reminder that they were not alone. Word spread quietly. Women helped other women. The network grew. Donations started coming in from unexpected places. Anonymous gifts. Small amounts at first. Then larger ones. One donation came from a company I recognized, one of Daniel's business partners. They had no idea they were funding a project started by the wife their golden boy had tried to destroy. The irony was delicious. But I wasn't satisfied with just building something new. I wanted Daniel to answer for what he'd done. Not just to me. To everyone. Because men like him don't hurt just one woman. They leave a trail of destruction wherever they go. So I did something I never thought I'd be brave enough to do. I hired a private investigator. His name was Raymond, an ex-cop who specialized in corporate investigations. He was in his 70s, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. I met him in a diner on the edge of town. I slid him a photo of Daniel, one from a magazine cover where he was smiling like he owned the world. Raymond studied it and chuckled. The golden boy himself. "This should be interesting. What do you need?" "Everything," I said. "Every lie. Every secret. Everything he's been hiding." Raymond leaned back. "This kind of investigation isn't cheap." "I have money," I said. And I did. I'd been smart enough, even in the worst of times, to keep a separate account Daniel never knew about. Call it intuition. Call it survival instinct. Call it a woman knowing, deep down, that someday she might need to save herself. 3 weeks later, Raymond called me. "You need to see this," he said. We met at the same diner. He slid a thick folder across the table. Inside were documents that made my blood run cold. Offshore accounts. Payments to politicians that skirted the line of legality or crossed it entirely. Contracts signed under false pretenses. Money moved around like shells in a con game. Daniel's empire wasn't just built on ambition. It was built on fraud. "This is enough to bring him down," Raymond said, lighting a cigarette despite the no-smoking sign. "But you need to be smart about how you use it. Men like him have lawyers. Lots of them." I studied the papers, my heart pounding. This was it. This was the ammunition I needed. But I had to be careful, had to be strategic, had to make sure that when I struck, it would be devastating and final. Over the next few months, I became someone I didn't recognize, in the best way possible. I was no longer the timid wife who apologized for existing. I was sharp, focused, driven. I spent my days helping women through the Rising Phoenix Project and my nights studying every document Raymond had given me. I contacted journalists. Anonymously at first. I sent them pieces of the puzzle. Hints. Breadcrumbs leading to a bigger story. One journalist in particular was interested. Her name was Jennifer, and she'd been investigating corporate corruption for years. When I finally called her directly, I kept my voice steady. "If you want the story of the decade, you'll want to watch Daniel Reeves at the Sterling Foundation Gala next month." "Who is this?" she asked. "Someone who knows where all the bodies are buried." "The gala." Of course it would come back to a gala. The universe has a sense of humor like that. When the invitation arrived at my old address, Patricia forwarded it to me. I stared at it for a long time. Daniel's name was at the top. He was being honored for humanitarian excellence. The irony was almost funny. Almost. Patricia found me that evening, sitting on my small couch, holding the invitation. "Are you thinking what I think you're thinking?" she asked. I looked up at her. "I need that dress. The silver one. The one from that night." She'd saved it for me, cleaned and pressed. When I tried it on, I barely recognized myself in the mirror. I'd lost weight. My face was leaner, sharper. My eyes held something they'd never held before: certainty. I wasn't the woman who had been locked out in the cold anymore. That woman had died in the snow. The woman looking back at me now was someone new. Someone stronger. "Are you sure about this?" Patricia asked, zipping up the back of the dress. I met her eyes in the mirror. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The night of the gala, it started snowing again. Soft, gentle flakes that looked almost magical in the streetlights. I stood outside the venue, watching people arrive in their expensive cars, wearing their expensive clothes, playing their expensive games. For a moment, I felt that old fear creep in. What if this didn't work? What if he won again? What if I wasn't strong enough? But then I remembered the cold. The door slamming. The sound of his laughter while I begged for my life. And that fear turned into something else. Something harder. Something unbreakable. I straightened my shoulders, lifted my chin, and walked toward the entrance. My heels clicked on the marble steps. Cameras flashed. People turned and stared. Someone whispered, "Isn't that his wife?" I thought she was gone. I whispered to myself. But now I'm back. The ballroom was exactly as I remembered. Crystal chandeliers. Champagne flowing. People laughing too loudly at jokes that weren't funny. Because that's what you do when you're trying to impress each other. Classical music played softly in the background. Everything was perfect. Orchestrated. Fake. I walked through the crowd slowly. Deliberately. Let them stare. Let them whisper. I had nothing to hide anymore. Nothing to be ashamed of. I was here for one reason, and one reason only. Then I saw him. Daniel stood near the stage, surrounded by admirers. He wore a perfectly tailored suit. His hair was styled just right. His smile was practiced and warm. He looked successful, powerful, untouchable. But when his eyes met mine across that crowded room, his smile faltered. Just for a second. Just long enough for me to see the fear. He excused himself from his circle and walked toward me quickly. His voice was low when he reached me, barely controlled. "What are you doing here?" I smiled. A real smile. "I was invited. You need to leave. Now." "Or what?" I said calmly. "You'll lock me out in the cold again?" His jaw tightened. People were starting to notice us. Starting to sense tension. His new girlfriend appeared at his side, confused, possessive. I didn't even look at her. She wasn't important. She was just another woman who hadn't learned yet what I'd learned the hard way. An announcer's voice cut through the murmurs. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome tonight's guest of honor, Daniel Reeves." Daniel gave me one last warning look before turning away and heading to the stage. The spotlight hit him. Everyone applauded. He launched into his speech about charity, integrity, and giving back to the community. His voice was smooth, confident, convincing. He'd always been good at performing. "Tonight, we celebrate the human spirit," he said, his arms spread wide. The power of generosity. The importance of honesty in business and in life. That's when the large screen behind him flickered. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. The first image appeared: bank statements. Offshore accounts. Numbers that didn't add up. Daniel's signature at the bottom of documents that were clearly fraudulent. Then came the headlines, projected huge for everyone to see. Reeves Industries under investigation. Illegal campaign contributions exposed. Whistleblower reveals corporate fraud. The room erupted. Gasps. Shouts. People pulling out their phones to record everything. Daniel spun around, staring at the screen in disbelief. His face went from confusion to rage to panic in seconds. "Who did this?" he shouted, his voice cracking. "Turn it off. Turn it off now." But the images kept coming. More documents. More proof. Years of lies displayed for everyone to see. The foundation he'd built his entire reputation on was crumbling in real time. I stepped forward. My voice cut through the chaos, clear and strong. "You built everything on lies, Daniel. But lies don't last forever. Eventually, the truth comes out." He turned to me, his eyes wild. You did this." "No," I said calmly. "You did this. I just made sure everyone finally saw who you really are." Security rushed in. But they weren't there for me. Behind them came federal agents, holding badges and warrants. I watched as they read Daniel his rights. As they placed handcuffs on the wrists that once held mine. As they led him through a crowd that parted like water, everyone suddenly desperate to distance themselves from him. He looked back at me one last time as they walked him out. His expression was a mixture of hatred and disbelief. "I made you," he hissed. "You were nothing without me." I met his eyes without flinching. "You're right. I was nothing. But that was before you tried to kill me. Now," I smiled. "Now I'm everything you'll never be. I'm free." They led him away. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. The chaos swirled around me, but I felt strangely calm. Like I was standing in the eye of a hurricane. Patricia appeared at my side, tears streaming down her face. "It's done," she whispered. "No," I said, watching Daniel disappear through the doors. "It's just beginning." Because this wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclamation. About showing every woman who'd ever been silenced that she could speak. Every woman who'd been made to feel small that she could grow. Every woman who'd been pushed down that she could rise. The Rising Phoenix Project exploded after that night. Women from all over the country reached out. Donations poured in. We opened 3 more shelters within 6 months. We hired lawyers to provide free legal aid. We created job training programs. We built something real and lasting from the ashes of my destroyed marriage. Months later, a letter arrived. From Daniel. He was awaiting trial, facing years in prison. His empire had collapsed. His reputation was destroyed. In the letter, he wrote about regret. About how he'd lost everything. About how he was sorry. At the very end, he asked if I could ever forgive him. I sat with that letter for a long time. Part of me wanted to write back. To tell him exactly what his cruelty had cost me. To make him understand the full weight of what he'd done. But then I realized something important. He didn't deserve my anger. He didn't deserve my forgiveness. He didn't deserve anything from me at all. I folded the letter back into its envelope and dropped it into the recycling bin. Then I walked to the window and looked out at the snow falling gently outside. It was winter again. A year had passed since that terrible night. But this time, the cold didn't hurt. It felt clean. Fresh. Like the world was being washed new. I thought about the woman I used to be. The one who made herself small. Who apologized for existing. Who believed that love meant sacrifice without reciprocation. That woman was gone. And I didn't mourn her. Because in her place stood someone stronger. Someone who knew her worth. Someone who would never again let anyone make her feel worthless. "Thank you," I whispered to the falling snow. "Thank you for not letting me die that night. Because here's what I learned. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us become the doorways to our greatest transformations. Sometimes we have to freeze before we can burn. Sometimes we have to die before we can truly live." The story could end there. But it doesn't. Because every day, another woman walks through the doors of the Rising Phoenix Project. Another survivor who needs to know she's not alone. That there's life after betrayal. That there's strength in vulnerability. That there's power in choosing yourself. And every time I welcome one of these women, I see myself in her eyes. The fear. The shame. The belief that somehow she deserved what happened to her. And I get to tell her the truth that saved my life. You didn't deserve this. But you do deserve better. And you're going to get it. Because you're stronger than you know. You're braver than you think. And you're going to survive this. Just like I did. Some people say what I did to Daniel was revenge. Maybe they're right. But revenge isn't always wrong. Sometimes it's justice in high heels. Sometimes it's a woman who refused to stay silent. Sometimes it's the universe finally balancing the scales. Daniel taught me a lot of things. He taught me that love without respect is just manipulation. That success without integrity is just theft. That power without compassion is just cruelty. But most importantly, he taught me something he never intended to teach me. He taught me that I didn't need him. That I never did. That the strength I thought came from being his wife actually came from being myself. That the empire I helped him build was nothing compared to the empire I could build on my own. So if you're reading this or listening to this, and you see yourself in my story, if you're in a relationship that's slowly destroying you, if you're with someone who makes you feel worthless, if you're trapped in a life that's killing your spirit, I want you to know something. You are not weak. You are not broken. You are not too damaged to start over. You are not too old, too tired, too scared, or too anything. You are exactly strong enough to do what needs to be done. You just haven't realized it yet. The door is always closer than you think. The exit is always there. The life you deserve is waiting for you on the other side of your fear. All you have to do is walk toward it. One step, then another, until one day you look back and realize you've traveled miles from where you used to be. And the cold, the metaphorical winter that almost killed you, it'll become the thing that saved you. Because storms don't destroy strong women. They reveal them. They strip away everything fake, everything weak, everything that was never really you in the first place. And what's left standing after the storm? That's your real self. Your true self. Your strongest self. I look at my life now, and I barely recognize it. I live in a small house, not a mansion. I drive an old car, not a luxury vehicle. I shop at regular stores, not designer boutiques. And I've never been happier. Because happiness isn't about having more. It's about being more authentic, more yourself, more alive. The snow is falling outside my window as I finish writing this. And I'm smiling, because I'm not afraid of winter anymore. I'm not afraid of the cold. I'm not afraid of being alone. I'm not afraid of anything, because I'm the woman who survived the storm. And if I can survive that, I can survive anything. So can you. Remember, when someone tries to leave you out in the cold, don't just survive it. Let it transform you. Let it wake you up. Let it show you who you really are underneath all the fear and doubt. And then rise. Rise like fire from ice. Rise like a phoenix from ashes. Rise like a woman who finally knows her worth. That's my story. That's my truth. And that's my message to anyone who needs to hear it. You're stronger than you know. And your story isn't over yet. In fact, it's just beginning. The end.